What if one of history's greatest civilizations was built not around life, but around death? Beneath the blazing Egyptian sun, hidden behind magnificent temples and towering pyramids, lay a world filled with fear, power, and secrets. Kings spent their lives preparing for death. Priests guarded sacred knowledge from ordinary people. Tomb robbers risked execution for treasures buried with the dead. Entire rulers vanished from history as if they had never existed at all. Ancient Egypt gave the world golden masks, colossal monuments, and some of the greatest wonders ever created by human hands. Yet beneath that beauty was a darker reality, one shaped by an obsession with eternity and a desperate struggle against being forgotten. For thousands of years, Egypt has fascinated the world. Its towering pyramids rise from the desert like mountains carved from stone. Its temples are covered with mysterious symbols that still tell stories after thousands of years. Its kings and queens continue to stare across the centuries through statues, paintings, and mummies, preserved with remarkable care. To many people, Egypt is a land of wonder, a civilization of gold, a civilization of magnificent monuments, a civilization that seemed almost immortal. Yet beneath that beauty was another story, a darker story, a story of death, fear, power, and secrets. The pyramids were not built as symbols of life. They were built for the dead. The most precious treasures of Egypt were hidden beneath the earth. Its greatest rulers spent much of their lives preparing for death. Its priests developed elaborate rituals designed to protect souls from destruction. Its kings fought desperately to preserve their names for eternity, and throughout the centuries, countless secrets were buried beneath the sands, hidden from the living world. Tonight, we journey beyond the golden masks and famous monuments. We will explore the darker side of ancient Egypt, a world where death ruled daily life, a world where tomb robbers hunted unimaginable treasures, a world where powerful rulers erased their enemies from history itself, a world where entire lives were dedicated to the pursuit of immortality. Because ancient Egypt was not simply a civilization obsessed with life, it was a civilization obsessed with what came after. Chapter 2. Why Death Ruled Egypt. Imagine living in a world where every action, every prayer, and every choice could determine your fate for eternity. For the people of ancient Egypt, death was not the end of existence. It was the beginning of a journey. A dangerous journey. A journey filled with challenges, judgments, and unseen dangers that could destroy a soul forever. This belief shaped nearly every aspect of Egyptian life. While many civilizations focused primarily on the living world, the Egyptians devoted extraordinary attention to what came after death. Their homes were temporary. Their tombs were eternal. Their lives were brief. Their afterlife was forever. To understand ancient Egypt's darkest secrets, we must first understand why death held such power over their civilization. The answer begins with the Egyptian view of the universe itself. The Egyptians believed that life followed an endless cycle. Every day, the sun god Ra traveled across the sky. Every night, he disappeared beneath the horizon and entered the underworld. There he faced darkness and chaos before being reborn with the dawn. The Nile River followed a similar pattern. Each year, its waters flooded the land. The floodwaters eventually receded. Fresh crops emerged from the rich soil left behind. Life appeared to die and return again. To the Egyptians, death was not destruction. It was transformation. Just as the sun returned every morning, they believed human beings could also be reborn after death. But rebirth was never guaranteed. Survival in the next world required preparation. and preparation required knowledge. The Egyptians believed that every person consisted of multiple spiritual elements. Among these were the Ka and the Ba. The Ka was often described as a person's life force. It needed food, drink, and offerings after death. The Ba represented aspects of personality and individuality. After death, it could travel between the worlds of the living and the dead. For eternity to succeed, these spiritual parts needed to reunite with the preserved body. If the body was destroyed, the soul's future could be placed in jeopardy. This belief explains why preserving the dead became one of the most important practices in Egyptian society. The body was not simply a shell, it was a sacred vessel. Without it, immortality might be impossible. This fear drove Egyptians to develop elaborate burial traditions, unlike anything the world had ever seen. Yet, preserving the body was only the beginning. The soul still faced a dangerous journey through the underworld. The Egyptians called this realm the Duat. The Duat was not a place of eternal punishment, nor was it a simple paradise. It was a mysterious landscape filled with rivers, gates, guardians, and supernatural beings. The deceased needed guidance to navigate its many dangers. That guidance came through sacred texts, prayers, and rituals. Some of these writings were eventually collected into what modern scholars call the Book of the Dead. Despite its name, it was not a single book. It was a collection of spells and instructions. These texts were designed to help the deceased survive the challenges ahead. Some spells provided protection from dangerous creatures. Others helped the dead answer questions posed by divine judges. Many were intended to ensure safe passage through the underworld. The journey was difficult. Failure was always possible. And at the center of that journey stood one of ancient Egypt's most powerful symbols, the Judgment of the Dead. According to Egyptian belief, the deceased would eventually appear before Osiris, the god of the afterlife. There, their heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. Ma'at represented truth, justice, balance, and cosmic order. The heart was believed to contain the record of a person's life. Every action, every decision, every wrongdoing. Nothing could be hidden. If the heart balanced with the feather, the individual was judged worthy. They could enter the eternal afterlife, a place of peace, abundance, and renewal. But if the heart was found heavy with wrongdoing, a terrible fate awaited. Waiting nearby was a fearsome creature known today as Ammit, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile. Ammit devoured unworthy hearts. For Egyptians, this was not simply death. It was something far worse, the complete destruction of existence. The soul would cease forever. No rebirth, no afterlife, no eternity, only oblivion. This fear of being erased completely became one of the most powerful forces in Egyptian culture. The goal was not merely to live forever. The goal was to avoid being forgotten. That fear explains why names became so important. The Egyptians believed that a person's name possessed power. As long as a name survived, a part of that person survived as well. Names were carved into tombs, written on statues, recorded on temple walls. The destruction of a name could be a devastating punishment. In some cases, enemies attempted exactly that. They removed names from monuments, destroyed inscriptions, erased images. It was an attack not only on memory, but on eternity itself. We will explore these erased rulers later in our story. For now, it is enough to understand how deeply Egyptians feared disappearance. The afterlife offered hope, but it also inspired anxiety, because immortality required constant protection. Families visited tombs with offerings. Priests performed rituals. Monuments were maintained. Everything was done to ensure the dead remained secure. This system created an enormous industry devoted to death. Builders constructed tombs. Artists painted burial chambers. Craftsmen created coffins. Priests performed ceremonies. Embalmers preserved bodies. Thousands of people made their living preparing others for eternity. Death was not separate from Egyptian society. It was woven into daily life. The greatest rulers devoted extraordinary resources to securing their place in the next world. Entire pyramids were built for this purpose. Massive temples rose from the desert. Treasures beyond imagination were buried underground, all because Egyptians believed eternity depended upon preparation. Yet despite every precaution, danger remained. Tombs could be robbed. Bodies could be damaged. Names could be erased. Even the mightiest pharaoh could not completely control the future. And so the Egyptians continued searching for new ways to protect themselves against oblivion. Their solution would become one of the most famous and unsettling practices in human history: the preservation of the dead through mummification, a process so extraordinary that it still fascinates the world thousands of years later. And it is there, inside the embalming chambers of ancient Egypt, that our story now turns. Chapter 3: The Price of Immortality. Immortality was not free. For the rulers of ancient Egypt, eternity demanded an enormous price. It required wealth. It required labor. It required power. And sometimes it required the efforts of thousands of people working for years to prepare a single individual for life after death. Today, when we look at the pyramids rising from the desert, we often see symbols of human achievement. They are among the most recognizable monuments on Earth. They inspire wonder, admiration, curiosity. Yet beneath their grandeur lies a darker question. How much did an entire civilization sacrifice in the pursuit of eternity? To the ancient Egyptians, a tomb was not merely a grave. It was a house for the dead, a place where the spirit could continue to exist forever. The more powerful the individual, the greater the tomb needed to be. For kings and pharaohs, ordinary burials were unthinkable. A ruler who governed Egypt was expected to continue ruling in the next world. His tomb had to reflect that status. His journey into eternity had to be protected. His memory had to survive for all time. This belief fueled some of the most ambitious construction projects in human history. During the Old Kingdom, Egypt entered what historians often call the Age of the Pyramids. Pharaohs commissioned vast monuments, unlike anything the world had ever seen. Each generation sought to leave behind something greater than the last. The ultimate expression of this ambition rose on the Giza Plateau, the Great Pyramid, built for the pharaoh Khufu. Originally standing about 146 meters, or 481 feet tall, it remained the tallest human-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Millions of limestone blocks were transported and assembled with astonishing precision. The scale of the project still amazes engineers today. Yet, the Great Pyramid was not built as a palace. It was built as a tomb, a monument to death, a monument to immortality. For years, people imagined that pyramids were built by vast armies of slaves. Modern archaeological evidence tells a more complex story. Many workers appear to have been skilled laborers who lived in organized communities near the construction sites. They received food, medical care, and housing, But regardless of their status, the work was grueling. Stone blocks, weighing several tons, had to be quarried, transported, and positioned with incredible accuracy. Workers endured intense heat, physical exhaustion, injuries, and constant danger. Entire communities became devoted to the burial projects of kings. The resources required were immense. Food had to be supplied. Tools had to be manufactured. Architects, engineers, craftsmen, and laborers had to be coordinated. The construction of a royal tomb became a national effort, a massive investment designed to secure one person's eternal future, and the pyramids were only the beginning. Inside royal tombs, treasures accumulated in extraordinary quantities: furniture, jewelry, weapons, statues, chariots, clothing, food, everything the deceased might need in the next life. The Egyptians believed that these objects could accompany the dead into eternity. A king who possessed wealth in life would require wealth in death. A king who enjoyed luxury on earth should enjoy luxury forever. As a result, tombs became storehouses of unimaginable riches. The burial chamber of a powerful ruler could contain enough treasure to transform an ordinary person into one of the wealthiest individuals in the kingdom. But these treasures also created a dangerous problem. The more wealth buried underground, the greater the temptation for thieves. Every tomb became a target. Every burial attracted attention. Every hidden chamber inspired greed. The pursuit of immortality unintentionally created an entire world of crime. Yet before we explore tomb robbers and ancient theft, we must understand the mindset behind these extravagant burials. To the Egyptians, these expenditures were not wasteful. They were necessary. The afterlife was believed to be real. The dangers were believed to be real. The need for protection was believed to be real. Failure to prepare properly could result in disaster. A neglected tomb might leave the deceased vulnerable. A damaged body might threaten eternal existence. A forgotten name could disappear from history forever. For the elite, spending enormous resources on burial was seen as an investment in eternity, and nowhere was this belief more visible than in the Valley of the Kings. By the time of the New Kingdom, pharaohs began abandoning pyramid construction. The giant monuments were too visible, too vulnerable, too attractive to thieves. Instead, rulers chose to hide their tombs deep within the barren cliffs west of the Nile. The Valley of the Kings became a secret city of the dead. From the outside, the landscape appeared empty and lifeless. But beneath the rocky ground lay elaborate corridors, chambers, shrines, and treasures. Each tomb represented years of planning and construction. Artists painted walls with scenes of gods, monsters, and journeys through the afterlife. Priests inscribed sacred texts designed to guide and protect the deceased. Every detail served a purpose. Nothing was left to chance, or so they hoped. Because despite all precautions, eternity remained fragile. Even the most powerful rulers could not fully control what happened after their deaths. Some tombs were plundered within generations. Others were damaged by floods. Some were forgotten entirely. The dream of immortality was constantly threatened by time itself. Perhaps no discovery illustrates this better than the tomb of Tutankhamun. When British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the tomb in 1922, he found treasures beyond imagination: golden shrines, jewelry, weapons, furniture, and the famous golden burial mask that would become one of the world's most iconic artifacts. The discovery stunned the world. Yet Tutankhamun was not one of Egypt's greatest rulers. His tomb was relatively modest compared to those of many pharaohs. The reason so much survived was simple. Most royal tombs had already been robbed long ago. The treasures of countless kings vanished into history, melted down, sold, destroyed, forgotten. Tutankhamun's tomb survived, largely because it remained hidden. Its discovery provided a rare glimpse into what Egypt's rulers hoped eternity would look like: gold, power, protection, and everlasting remembrance. But even the most magnificent tomb could not guarantee safety. The Egyptians learned this lesson again and again. Their monuments inspired awe, their treasures inspired greed, and their fear of being forgotten drove them to seek even greater forms of protection. This search would lead to one of the most famous and unsettling practices in human history: the preservation of the body itself. If eternity depended upon the survival of the dead, then preserving the body became a sacred duty. Inside the embalming houses of ancient Egypt, priests and specialists developed a process unlike any other. A process designed to defeat decay. A process designed to preserve a human being for thousands of years. A process the modern world knows as mummification. And it is there, in the shadowed chambers where the dead were prepared for eternity, that our story now continues. Chapter 4. Inside the Mummification Chamber. For 70 days, the dead belonged to the embalmers. Behind temple walls and within specialized workshops, far from the eyes of ordinary Egyptians, a remarkable transformation took place. A human body was slowly prepared for eternity. To modern observers, the process can seem both fascinating and unsettling. It combined science and religion, practical skill and sacred ritual. The Egyptians believed that preserving the body was essential for survival in the afterlife. Without a recognizable body, the soul could become lost. Without preservation, immortality itself could be threatened. The body was not simply a corpse. It was the eternal home of the spirit. And so the battle against decay became one of ancient Egypt's most sacred responsibilities. When a person died, their family faced an important decision. The quality of mummification depended largely on wealth. The richest Egyptians could afford the most elaborate treatments. The poor often received simpler burials. Even in death, social status mattered. For kings and nobles, however, only the finest preparation would do. The process began soon after death. The body was transported to an embalming workshop, where trained specialists took over. These individuals were highly respected. Their work connected the living with the gods, yet their task was also deeply practical. They faced the same challenge that every civilization has faced throughout history. How do you stop a body from decomposing? The Egyptians developed an answer that would preserve some individuals for thousands of years. The first stage involved purification. The body was washed carefully, using water and sacred oils. Prayers were spoken. Rituals were performed. The transition from life to death had begun. Next came one of the most famous and unsettling parts of the process: the removal of the brain. Using specialized tools, embalmers entered through the nasal cavity. The brain was broken down and extracted piece by piece. Unlike modern medicine, the Egyptians did not view the brain as the center of thought or identity. To them, the heart held far greater importance. The brain was considered unnecessary for the afterlife. The heart, however, was sacred. It was usually left inside the body. The Egyptians believed it would be needed during the judgment of the dead. When the heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, it would reveal the truth about a person's life. Removing it could endanger the soul's future. After the brain came the internal organs. A careful incision was made in the side of the body. The stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver were removed. These organs were particularly vulnerable to decay. If left inside, they could quickly destroy the body. But the Egyptians did not simply discard them. Each organ received special treatment. They were dried, wrapped, and often placed inside containers known today as canopic jars. These jars were protected by divine guardians. Each guardian watched over a specific organ. Together, they helped ensure the deceased would remain whole in the next life. Once the organs had been removed, the body entered its most important stage, drying. Ancient Egypt's embalmers understood something critical. Moisture caused decay. To preserve the body, moisture had to be removed. The solution was a naturally occurring salt mixture called natron. The body was covered and packed with natron. For approximately 40 days, the salt slowly absorbed moisture from the tissues. The transformation was dramatic. When the drying process ended, much of the body's water had vanished. Decay had been greatly slowed. The body had become something entirely different, a mummy, yet the process was far from complete. The skin could become fragile. The body could lose its natural shape. To address this, embalmers carefully treated the remains. Resins and oils were applied. The body was stuffed with linen and other materials to restore its appearance. Artificial eyes might be inserted. Facial features were shaped and preserved. The goal was not simply preservation. The goal was recognition. The deceased needed to remain identifiable. The soul would need to recognize its body. Family members would need to recognize their loved one. The gods would need to recognize the individual seeking eternal life. Only then could the final stage begin, wrapping. This process required extraordinary care. Hundreds of meters of linen could be used for a single individual. Layer after layer was applied. Amulets were inserted between the wrappings. Protective charms guarded different parts of the body. Prayers accompanied each stage. The wrapping itself became a sacred ritual. Every fold carried meaning. Every layer offered protection. Every action strengthened the deceased's chances of surviving eternity. For royal mummies, the process reached astonishing levels of complexity. Gold masks might cover the face. Jewelry could be placed among the wrappings. Protective texts were included. The dead king was transformed into something more than human. He became a divine being, prepared for the next world. The most famous example is undoubtedly Tutankhamun. His mummy rested beneath a magnificent golden mask. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. The image projected eternal youth and divine power. Yet beneath the gold lay a preserved human body, a young ruler who had died more than 3,000 years ago. The mask concealed the reality of death, but it also reflected Egypt's greatest hope, that death could be conquered, that memory could survive, that eternity was possible. Despite the sacred nature of mummification, the process reveals a striking truth about ancient Egypt. The Egyptians were deeply aware of mortality. They understood that every person, regardless of status, would eventually die. Rather than denying death, they confronted it directly. They studied it, prepared for it, built entire industries around it. Their civilization became one of the most death-conscious societies in human history. Yet this obsession produced remarkable achievements. Through mummification, they preserved faces, fingerprints, hair, and even traces of disease. Modern scientists have learned extraordinary details about ancient lives through the study of mummies. We have discovered injuries, medical conditions, dietary habits, family relationships, and even evidence of murder. The dead continue to tell stories thousands of years after their burial. Ironically, the Egyptians achieved exactly what they hoped for. They defeated forgetting. Their bodies survived. Their names survived. Their civilization survived. But preservation came at a cost. The wealth buried with mummies attracted thieves. The elaborate tombs inspired criminals. And the promise of hidden treasure created one of ancient Egypt's greatest problems. For every king seeking eternal peace, there was someone willing to disturb the dead in search of gold. Soon, tombs became targets. Sacred resting places became crime scenes. And a shadow war began between those who protected the dead and those who sought to rob them. It is a story of greed, betrayal, and ancient crime. A story that reveals another of Egypt's darkest secrets. The world of the tomb robbers. Chapter 5. Tomb robbers, Egypt's ancient criminals. The treasures hidden within Egypt's tombs were meant to last forever. Gold masks, jewelry, sacred statues, weapons, furniture, food, and countless objects intended to accompany the dead into eternity. But there was one problem. The living wanted them. From the moment the first great tombs were sealed, a silent war began. A war between those who sought to protect the dead and those willing to rob them. For all their power, wealth, and engineering brilliance, the pharaohs could never completely stop one simple human force: greed. Today, many people imagine tomb robbery as an adventure, a daring treasure hunt in ancient ruins. The reality was far darker. Tomb robbery was one of the most serious crimes in ancient Egypt. It was considered both theft and sacrilege. The robbers were not merely stealing from the dead. They were attacking a person's chance at eternity. To an Egyptian, breaking into a tomb was far more than a criminal act. It was an assault on the soul itself. Every stolen object weakened the protection surrounding the deceased. Every damaged coffin threatened the afterlife. Every broken seal violated sacred space. Yet, despite severe punishments, tomb robbery became widespread. The reason was simple. The rewards were enormous. A single royal tomb could contain enough gold and precious materials to make a person wealthy beyond imagination. For desperate workers, corrupt officials, and organized thieves, the temptation was difficult to resist. The tombs of kings became irresistible targets, and often the people who knew the tombs best were the ones who robbed them. Many royal tombs required years of construction. Architects designed them, laborers carved them, artists decorated them, priests blessed them. By the time a tomb was completed, hundreds of people might know its location and layout. Secrets rarely remain secret forever. As Egypt entered periods of political instability, economic hardship, and weakening central authority, opportunities for theft increased. The dead possessed treasures. The living needed money. The result was inevitable. Tombs began to fall, one by one, century after century. The Valley of the Kings, hidden among barren cliffs west of the Nile, was intended to protect Egypt's rulers from grave robbers. Unlike the giant pyramids, these tombs were concealed underground. Their entrances were hidden, their corridors sealed, their chambers protected by inscriptions and rituals. Yet even these precautions proved insufficient. Again and again, thieves found their way inside. They tunneled through walls, forced open doors, broke seals, destroyed coffins, and searched relentlessly for valuables. Many tombs were plundered, only decades after burial. Others survived longer before eventually falling victim to robbers. The evidence left behind tells a grim story. Archaeologists have discovered smashed sarcophagi, broken burial equipment, scattered human remains, and signs of hurried searches through sacred chambers. In some cases, mummies were stripped of jewelry and gold coverings. Even the bodies of kings were not spared. One of the most fascinating discoveries comes from surviving Egyptian court records. Unlike many ancient crimes, tomb robbery was sometimes investigated. The Egyptians documented interrogations, trials, and confessions. These records provide a rare glimpse into the criminal underworld of the ancient world. One famous collection of documents comes from the reign of Ramesses IX. The kingdom faced growing economic problems. Reports began to emerge that royal tombs had been violated. Officials launched investigations. Witnesses were questioned. Suspects were arrested. What they uncovered was shocking. Groups of organized robbers had systematically targeted tombs. Some used inside information. Others exploited weak security. Many worked together in carefully planned operations. The criminals often melted down stolen gold and divided the profits among themselves. Ancient confessions reveal the details. One accused robber admitted breaking into a royal tomb with accomplices. They forced their way inside. They stripped valuables from the burial. They removed precious metals from the mummy itself. Then they shared the loot. The testimony is remarkable because it sounds surprisingly modern. Greed, opportunity, conspiracy. The motives remain familiar even after thousands of years. Punishment for tomb robbery could be severe. Convicted criminals faced beatings, mutilation, imprisonment, or execution. Yet the threat of punishment rarely stopped future crimes. The rewards remained too great. As more tombs were robbed, Egypt faced an unexpected crisis. The bodies of its kings were becoming vulnerable. Priests and officials realized that if the tombs could not be protected, the royal mummies themselves might need rescue. In one of history's most extraordinary preservation efforts, they secretly removed many royal mummies from their original tombs. The bodies were hidden elsewhere, grouped together in concealed caches. Their purpose was simple: save the kings from the robbers. For centuries, these secret hiding places remained unknown. Then, in the 19th century, archaeologists made a remarkable discovery. Inside hidden chambers, they found dozens of royal mummies. Some of Egypt's greatest rulers rested side by side. Kings who had originally been buried in separate tombs had been gathered together by priests seeking to protect them. The cache included famous rulers such as Ramesses II and several other pharaohs. Ironically, the ancient rescue operation succeeded. The tombs were robbed, but many of the kings survived. Yet not all treasures were so fortunate. Countless objects vanished forever. Millions of dollars worth of gold, jewels, and artifacts disappeared into history, melted down, reused, lost. The scale of the destruction is impossible to calculate. What archaeologists uncover today may represent only a fraction of what once existed. Perhaps the greatest reminder of this loss came in 1922. British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the tomb of the young pharaoh Tutankhamun. Unlike most royal tombs, it had escaped major robbery. When Carter peered inside, he reportedly described seeing wonderful things, and indeed he had. Thousands of objects filled the chambers: golden shrines, jewelry, weapons, furniture, the famous golden mask. The discovery stunned the world because it revealed what many royal tombs had once looked like before centuries of theft. Tutankhamun's tomb was not extraordinary because it was rich. It was extraordinary because it survived. For every tomb like Tutankhamun's, countless others were emptied long ago. The robbers had won, at least partially, but tomb robbery left behind another legacy. As stories of violated tombs spread, so did tales of supernatural protection. Ancient warnings carved on walls, threats against intruders, promises of divine punishment. Over time, these inscriptions evolved into one of the most famous legends in human history, the Curse of the Pharaohs, a story that would captivate the modern world. A story filled with mystery, fear, coincidence, and speculation. But was there any truth behind the curse? Or was it simply another secret buried beneath the sands of Egypt? That mystery awaits us in the next chapter. Chapter 6: The Curse of the Pharaohs: Myth, Fear, and Reality. For centuries, treasure hunters, explorers, and archaeologists searched the sands of Egypt in pursuit of lost tombs. Most sought knowledge. Some sought fame. Others sought fortune. But many shared a common fear. What if the dead did not wish to be disturbed? The idea seems almost irresistible. An ancient king buried beneath the desert. A sealed tomb untouched for thousands of years. Sacred warnings carved into stone, and a mysterious curse waiting for anyone reckless enough to enter. It is one of the most enduring legends in history. The Curse of the Pharaohs, a tale that has inspired books, films, documentaries, and countless ghost stories. Yet behind the legend lies a fascinating mixture of history, coincidence, and human imagination. To understand how the curse was born, we must first return to ancient Egypt itself. The Egyptians took the protection of their dead very seriously. A tomb was not simply a burial place. It was a sacred space, a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead. Its purpose was to provide safety for eternity. Naturally, anyone who threatened that purpose was viewed as an enemy. Many tombs contained inscriptions intended to warn intruders. Some invoked divine protection. Others threatened punishment from the gods. A few included terrifying promises directed toward anyone who disturbed the deceased. To modern eyes, these warnings can sound like curses, but their purpose was often practical. The Egyptians wanted to discourage tomb robbers. Fear could be a powerful deterrent. A thief who believed supernatural punishment awaited him might think twice before breaking a seal. In this sense, the earliest curses functioned much like warning signs. They protected sacred property. Yet despite these warnings, tomb robbery continued. Gold remained more tempting than fear. The tombs were violated. Treasures were stolen, and the dead were disturbed. For thousands of years, the warnings appeared ineffective. Then came the discovery that changed everything. In November 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter made one of the most famous finds in archaeological history. Deep within the Valley of the Kings, he uncovered the tomb of Tutankhamun. The young pharaoh had died more than 3,000 years earlier. Unlike most royal burials, his tomb remained remarkably intact. The discovery electrified the world. Newspapers covered every development. Photographs of golden treasures appeared across the globe. Millions became fascinated with ancient Egypt. The excitement seemed endless. Then tragedy struck. Just a few months after the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon, The financial backer of the expedition died unexpectedly. The circumstances were unusual. A mosquito bite became infected. Complications followed. Soon, sensational headlines began appearing. The Pharaoh's curse strikes. The revenge of Tutankhamun. The king takes his victim. Reporters eagerly connected Carnarvon's death to the tomb. Rumors spread rapidly. Stories grew with each retelling. According to some accounts, strange events accompanied his death. Lights reportedly went out in Cairo. A beloved dog supposedly died at the same moment, thousands of miles away. Newspapers transformed coincidence into mystery. Mystery became legend, and legend became global fascination. The curse of Tutankhamun was born. Over the following years, every death connected to the excavation attracted attention. Whenever a visitor, researcher, or associate died, journalists pointed to the curse. The pattern seemed compelling. Ancient tomb discovered. Participants die. Ancient warning fulfilled. Yet the reality was far less dramatic. Many individuals connected to the excavation lived long lives. Howard Carter himself survived for more than 16 years after opening the tomb. Several key members of the team lived for decades. Statistically, the supposed curse becomes much less convincing when the full picture is considered. The human mind, however, is naturally drawn to patterns. People remember unusual events. They forget ordinary ones. A single mysterious death captures attention. Dozens of uneventful lives do not. This tendency helped fuel the curse legend. But if supernatural forces were not responsible, could there have been another explanation? Some researchers proposed scientific theories. Ancient tombs often remained sealed for centuries. Mold, fungi, and bacteria could accumulate inside enclosed spaces. Certain microorganisms can be harmful when inhaled. Could exposure to ancient biological hazards explain some illnesses? The idea attracted interest. Yet evidence remains limited. While sealed environments can contain dangerous substances, no scientific explanation has demonstrated a widespread deadly curse affecting those who entered Egyptian tombs. Most scholars today view the curse as a product of sensational journalism rather than supernatural reality. Nevertheless, the legend persists. And perhaps that is not surprising. The story contains all the ingredients people love. Ancient kings, hidden treasure, forbidden places, mysterious deaths, the possibility that some secrets should remain buried. The curse speaks to something deeper than archaeology. It reflects humanity's discomfort with disturbing the dead. Across cultures and throughout history, people have feared violating graves. Burial sites are sacred. They represent memory, respect, human dignity. The curse of the Pharaohs transforms that universal feeling into a powerful narrative. It asks a simple question: what happens when the living intrude upon the realm of the dead? The Egyptians themselves may have appreciated the irony. For centuries, they worked tirelessly to protect their tombs. They built hidden chambers, sealed entrances, carved warnings, created elaborate burial rituals. They feared tomb robbers more than ghosts. Yet thousands of years later, their greatest protection turned out to be something else entirely. A story, a legend, a warning powerful enough to survive into the modern world. But while the curse may be more myth than reality, ancient Egypt held secrets far darker than any supernatural tale. Some rulers were not protected after death. Instead, they were deliberately erased, their statues destroyed. their names removed from monuments, their memories attacked by future generations. In a civilization obsessed with immortality, this was among the harshest punishments imaginable. To lose your name was to lose eternity itself. And in the next chapter, we will meet the pharaohs and queens that Egypt tried to forget. Chapter 7. The rulers Egypt tried to erase. Death was not the greatest fear in ancient Egypt. Being forgotten was. The Egyptians believed that a person could live on after death through memory, ritual, and the survival of their name. As long as someone's name was spoken, written, and remembered, a part of them continued to exist. This belief gave enormous power to monuments, statues, and inscriptions. A carved name was more than decoration. It was a claim to eternity. But if a name could preserve a person forever, then destroying a name could become a devastating weapon. And throughout Egypt's long history, some rulers discovered exactly how ruthless that weapon could be. Their statues were shattered, their images defaced, their names chiseled from stone. Future generations were ordered to pretend they had never existed. It was an attack not just on reputation, it was an attack on immortality itself. In a civilization obsessed with eternal remembrance, erasure became one of the darkest forms of punishment. Among the most famous victims was a woman who had once ruled one of the greatest empires on earth. Her name was Hatshepsut. Today, historians recognize Hatshepsut as one of ancient Egypt's most successful pharaohs. Yet for centuries, it seemed as though someone had tried to remove her from history. Born into the royal family, Hatshepsut originally served as queen and regent, but over time, she assumed full pharaonic authority. This was highly unusual. Ancient Egypt had powerful queens, but the role of pharaoh was traditionally associated with men. Hatshepsut did not simply govern behind the scenes. She openly ruled as king. She commissioned monuments, directed major building projects, expanded trade networks, and presided over a period of stability and prosperity. To reinforce her authority, official artwork often depicted her wearing the symbols of kingship, the royal headdress, the ceremonial beard, the traditional attire of a pharaoh. She understood that power in Egypt depended on symbolism, and she used that symbolism masterfully. When she died, one might expect her memory to be celebrated. Instead, something strange happened. Years later, many images of Hatshepsut were systematically damaged. Her statues were broken. Her names were removed from monuments. Her achievements were obscured. The destruction was not random. It appeared deliberate. Someone wanted her erased. Historians continue debating the exact reasons. Some believe later rulers sought to reinforce traditional male succession. Others argue the actions were political rather than personal. Whatever the motive, the result was clear. One of Egypt's most successful rulers nearly vanished from history. Had archaeologists not uncovered surviving evidence, much of her story might have been lost forever. Yet Hatshepsut was not the only ruler targeted by memory's enemies. Another pharaoh would face an even more dramatic attempt at erasure. His name was Akhenaten, and he challenged the foundations of Egyptian religion itself. Before Akhenaten, Egypt worshipped a vast pantheon of gods. Temples dominated the landscape. Priests held immense influence. Religious traditions stretched back centuries. Then Akhenaten attempted something extraordinary. He sought to transform the spiritual life of an entire civilization. At the center of his revolution stood a deity known as Aten, represented by the sun's radiant disk. Akhenaten elevated Aten above all other gods. Traditional religious practices were restricted. Ancient temples lost influence. The power of long-established priesthoods was challenged. To support his new vision, Akhenaten even constructed a new capital city, a place dedicated to his religious reforms. For a time, it appeared as though Egypt's spiritual world had changed forever. But revolutions often create enemies, and Akhenaten created many. After his death, the backlash was swift. Later, rulers abandoned his capital, restored traditional religious practices, and began dismantling his legacy. His monuments were destroyed. His names were removed. His achievements were ignored. Official records often omitted him entirely. Future generations referred to him as a criminal or heretic. The king who had attempted to reshape Egypt's religion became one of the most thoroughly erased rulers in Egyptian history. For centuries, much of his story remained hidden beneath the desert. Only modern archaeology brought him back into the light. The irony is striking. Akhenaten tried to change Egypt forever. Instead, Egypt tried to pretend he never existed. Yet perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these erasures is what they reveal about power. The pharaohs projected an image of eternal authority. Their monuments were designed to last forever. Their inscriptions celebrated victory, stability, and divine favor. But beneath that image lay political struggles, rivalries, conflicts, and fears. The destruction of a ruler's memory was often carried out by successors seeking legitimacy. If a predecessor could be removed from history, then a new ruler could reshape the past. Control over memory became a form of control over reality. History itself became a battlefield. The stone walls of temples preserve evidence of these struggles. Archaeologists have found names carefully chiseled away, images deliberately damaged, cartouches erased, entire sections of monuments altered. In some places, traces of forgotten rulers remain visible beneath later inscriptions, ghosts of history hidden in plain sight. The effort required to erase a ruler could be immense. Workers had to revisit monuments. Sculptors had to modify artwork. Officials had to alter records. The campaign might continue for years, all because memory possessed power. And in ancient Egypt, power was everything. Yet not every attempt at erasure succeeded. Ironically, the destruction itself often attracted attention. A damaged statue raises questions. A missing name creates curiosity. An altered monument invites investigation. The very act of erasing someone can become evidence that they mattered. Hatshepsut survived because fragments remained. Akhenaten survived because traces endured. Their enemies tried to silence them. Instead, they created mysteries that future generations could not resist solving. Today, we know their names once again. We study their achievements. We debate their motives. We walk through the ruins they left behind. In the end, the struggle for immortality continues, not through magic, not through curses, but through memory. Yet while some rulers fought to preserve their names after death, others faced dangers while still alive. Behind the walls of Egypt's palaces, power could be deadly. Ambition flourished. Conspiracies formed. Families turned against one another. And in one extraordinary case, a plot unfolded that may have ended with the murder of a pharaoh himself. The next chapter takes us inside the dangerous world of royal intrigue. A world where the greatest threat to a king did not come from foreign enemies or tomb robbers. It came from those closest to the throne. Chapter 8: Palace Murder and the Harem Conspiracy. The greatest danger to a pharaoh was not always found on a distant battlefield. It was not always an invading army. It was not always famine, disease, or rebellion. Sometimes the greatest threat sat beside the throne. Sometimes it slept within the palace walls, and sometimes it shared the king's own blood. For all their divine status, Egypt's rulers were still human. They lived in a world of ambition, jealousy, rivalry, and political intrigue. Behind the magnificent temples and grand ceremonies lay a reality rarely depicted on monument walls. The royal court could be a dangerous place. Power attracted loyalty, but it also attracted enemies. And one of the most shocking examples emerged during the reign of one of Egypt's most powerful rulers. His name was Ramesses III. Today, historians often regard Ramesses III as the last great pharaoh of Egypt's new kingdom. He defended Egypt against foreign invasions, protected the kingdom during difficult times, and ruled for more than 3 decades. Yet despite his achievements, danger was growing within his own household. The threat would come from an unexpected source: the royal harem. To modern ears, the word harem may evoke images of luxury and comfort. In ancient Egypt, however, the royal harem was far more complex. It functioned as a vast household containing wives, children, servants, officials, and administrators. It was a center of royal life. But it could also become a center of political competition. Every royal son represented a potential heir. Every royal mother hoped to secure the future of her own child. The stakes could not have been higher. The throne of Egypt was the most powerful position in the kingdom, and succession disputes could determine the fate of an empire. Among the many women within Ramesses III's household was a secondary wife known today as Ta. Unlike the great royal wife, Ta's son was not the leading candidate for succession. The future king was expected to be another prince. For Ta, this meant her son's chances of ruling Egypt were slipping away. What happened next would become one of the most extraordinary criminal conspiracies preserved from the ancient world. Evidence survives in a collection of judicial documents known as the Harem Conspiracy Papyri. These records reveal a plot involving royal women, palace officials, military personnel, and trusted servants. The conspirators shared a common goal: remove Ramesses III from power, place Ta's son upon the throne. It was nothing less than an attempted coup. The conspiracy appears to have been carefully organized. Messages were exchanged. Supporters were recruited. Plans were coordinated. Some documents even suggest the conspirators sought assistance through magical rituals and spells. In ancient Egypt, magic was not viewed as fantasy. It was considered a legitimate force capable of influencing events. The conspirators allegedly used wax figures and ritual practices in an effort to weaken their enemies and strengthen their cause. Whether these rituals had any practical effect is impossible to know, but their inclusion demonstrates how seriously the participants took the plot. They were willing to use every tool available: political, personal, and supernatural. The question that long puzzled historians was simple: did the conspiracy succeed? For many years, the answer remained uncertain. Ancient records clearly describe a trial after the plot was uncovered. Dozens of individuals were arrested. Officials investigated the conspiracy. Judges were appointed. The accused faced severe punishment. Several were executed. Others were forced to take their own lives. The penalties reflected the seriousness of the crime. Plotting against a pharaoh was among the gravest offenses imaginable. Yet the documents contained a mystery. They never explicitly stated whether Ramesses III had actually been killed. For decades, scholars debated the issue. Some believed the king survived. Others suspected he had fallen victim to the attack. The truth remained hidden for more than 3,000 years. Then modern technology provided an answer. In the 21st century, researchers examined the mummy of Ramesses III using advanced medical imaging. The results were astonishing. Beneath the wrappings, they discovered evidence of a catastrophic injury. The pharaoh's throat had been cut. The wound was deep, severe enough to damage major structures in the neck. Modern experts concluded that the injury would almost certainly have been fatal. At last, the mystery appeared solved. Ramesses III had likely been assassinated. The conspiracy had succeeded in killing the king, yet it had failed in its ultimate objective. The conspirators did not gain control of Egypt. The royal succession continued. The plotters were arrested and punished. Their dream of seizing power collapsed. But the murder of Ramesses III remains one of the most dramatic episodes in Egyptian history. It reveals a side of ancient Egypt often hidden beneath its monuments, a world of betrayal, a world of ambition, a world where even a divine ruler could fall victim to human schemes. The evidence uncovered from the mummy offers another remarkable insight. The embalmers who prepared Ramesses III appear to have attempted to conceal the devastating wound. Special materials were placed around the injury. The damage was carefully treated during mummification. Even in death, preserving the king's appearance remained important. The effort reflects a recurring theme throughout Egyptian history. Image mattered. Memory mattered. Eternity mattered. The body of the king had to remain whole. The dignity of the ruler had to be protected. The illusion of eternal power had to survive. Yet the assassination also demonstrates the limits of that power. No monument could prevent betrayal. No temple could eliminate ambition. No crown could guarantee safety. The pharaohs presented themselves as living gods. But behind the scenes, they faced the same fears that have haunted rulers throughout history. Fear of rivals. Fear of conspiracies. Fear of losing control. The palace, for all its splendor, could become a battlefield. And while Ramesses III's murder is one of the best documented conspiracies, it was far from the only secret hidden within Egypt's elite circles. Royal families struggled with succession. Courtiers competed for influence. Priests accumulated authority. Generals pursued prestige. The closer one stood to power, the greater the risks often became. Ancient Egypt projected an image of stability. Its monuments emphasized order. Its inscriptions celebrated harmony. But beneath that carefully crafted image existed tensions and rivalries that occasionally erupted into violence. The murder of a king reminds us that even the mightiest civilizations are shaped by human nature, and human nature can be dangerous. Yet beyond the palace walls, another powerful group quietly shaped the destiny of Egypt. They did not wear crowns. They did not command armies, but they controlled knowledge. They interpreted the will of the gods. They guarded sacred rituals, and they possessed influence that sometimes rivaled the pharaoh himself. To understand Egypt's darkest secrets, we must now enter the world of the priests. A world of sacred knowledge, ritual power, medicine, and mysteries known only to a privileged few. Chapter 9. Sacred Knowledge, Priests, Magic, Medicine, and Hidden Power. While pharaohs ruled Egypt from their palaces, another force shaped the kingdom from behind temple walls. They did not command great armies. They rarely appeared in grand victory scenes carved into stone. Yet their influence reached every corner of Egyptian life. They were the priests, guardians of sacred knowledge, keepers of rituals, interpreters of divine will. And for thousands of years, they controlled some of the most powerful secrets in the ancient world. To modern people, knowledge is often freely available. Books, schools, the internet. Information flows everywhere. Ancient Egypt was very different. Knowledge was power, and power was carefully guarded. Most Egyptians could not read or write. Sacred texts were copied by trained scribes. Religious rituals were performed by specialists. The mysteries of the gods belonged largely to those initiated into temple life. For ordinary people, much of the spiritual world remained hidden behind layers of ceremony and symbolism. The temple was not simply a place of worship. It was the beating heart of Egyptian religion. Massive temple complexes dominated cities and sacred sites. Their towering columns and decorated walls projected an image of divine authority. But beyond the public courtyards lay restricted spaces, areas where only priests and select officials could enter. These inner chambers were considered sacred, places where gods and humans met, places where rituals helped maintain the order of the universe. To the Egyptians, the world depended upon balance. They called this balance ma'at, truth, justice, harmony, cosmic order. The gods maintained ma'at. The pharaoh protected ma'at, and the priests performed rituals designed to preserve it. Every day, temple priests carried out ceremonies that followed strict traditions. Statues of gods were washed, dressed, fed with offerings, honored with prayers. The statues were not viewed as mere artwork. They were believed to serve as physical vessels through which divine presence could be expressed. Maintaining these rituals was considered essential. If the relationship between humans and the gods broke down, chaos might follow. In this way, priests occupied a unique position. They stood between ordinary people and the divine. And with that position came tremendous influence. Over time, some temple institutions became enormously wealthy. They owned land, controlled resources, employed workers, managed agricultural estates. The temples became economic centers as well as religious centers. In certain periods of Egyptian history, powerful priesthoods accumulated influence, rivaling that of the king himself. The relationship between pharaohs and priests was not always simple. Sometimes they worked together. Sometimes they competed for authority. The struggle between political power and religious power became one of the recurring themes of Egyptian history. Yet perhaps the most fascinating aspect of priestly knowledge involved something modern people often misunderstand: magic. Today, the word magic usually suggests fantasy. Ancient Egypt saw it differently. The Egyptians used the concept known as Heka. Heka was not viewed as illusion or entertainment. It was considered a real force woven into creation itself. According to Egyptian belief, the gods used Heka to shape the world. Humans could access aspects of this power through rituals, prayers, symbols, and sacred words. Magic and religion were not separate categories. They were deeply connected. A protective amulet, a healing prayer, a funerary spell, all could be expressions of Heka. To modern observers, these practices may seem mystical. To Egyptians, they were practical tools for navigating a dangerous universe. People carried amulets for protection, recited prayers against illness. used sacred texts to defend themselves against unseen threats. The same civilization that built pyramids also relied heavily upon symbolic and spiritual practices. But Egypt's priests possessed more than ritual knowledge. They also developed remarkable expertise in medicine. Many ancient medical texts have survived. These documents reveal a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of the human body. Egyptian physicians treated wounds, set broken bones, performed surgical procedures, diagnosed illnesses, prepared medicines using plants, minerals, and other natural ingredients. Some treatments were effective. Others reflected religious beliefs and magical traditions. Often the two approaches existed side by side. A physician might prescribe a practical remedy while also recommending a protective spell. To the Egyptians, there was no contradiction. The physical and spiritual worlds were interconnected. Disease could have natural causes, but it might also involve supernatural influences. Both possibilities required attention. This combination of medicine and ritual created an intriguing legacy. In some areas, Egyptian knowledge was centuries ahead of its time. In others, it remained deeply rooted in religious tradition. The result was a worldview where science, spirituality, and symbolism existed together. The temple libraries preserved much of this knowledge. Within their walls, scribes copied texts, recorded observations, maintained religious traditions, and safeguarded information passed down through generations. These collections represented one of the greatest concentrations of knowledge in the ancient world, yet access remained limited. Knowledge was not distributed equally. It belonged primarily to those with education and status. For ordinary Egyptians, many of the temple's secrets remained inaccessible. This exclusivity enhanced the prestige of the priesthood. The less people understood, the more mysterious sacred knowledge appeared. The priests became custodians of mysteries, experts in symbols few could read, guardians of ceremonies few could witness, interpreters of forces few could fully comprehend. Their authority rested not only on belief, but also on information. And information can be a powerful form of control. Perhaps nowhere is this clearer than in the hieroglyphs themselves. The walls of temples and tombs were covered with intricate symbols. To most people they appeared beautiful, but mysterious. Only trained individuals could fully understand their meanings. Writing became another gateway to power. A scribe possessed abilities unavailable to most of society. He could record laws, preserve history, transmit religious teachings, and communicate across generations. The written word helped transform knowledge into authority. For centuries, these symbols remained silent to the modern world. Then, after the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, scholars gradually unlocked their meanings. Ancient voices began speaking once more. Texts hidden for millennia revealed prayers, stories, laws, and beliefs. Secrets that had once belonged only to priests became available to everyone. The mysteries of Egypt slowly emerged into the light. Yet despite centuries of research, many questions remain unanswered. Countless texts have been lost. Many temples lie in ruins. Entire libraries vanished long ago. The sands of Egypt still conceal information waiting to be discovered. For all that we have learned, there is still much we do not know. And perhaps that uncertainty is what makes ancient Egypt so captivating. It is a civilization that continues to reveal new secrets, new discoveries, new mysteries. Even today, archaeologists uncover forgotten tombs, hidden chambers, and lost artifacts. The story of Egypt is not finished. It is still being written. And in our next chapter, we venture into the mysteries that continue to puzzle historians and archaeologists alike. Lost tombs, missing pharaohs, hidden chambers, and secrets that may still lie buried beneath the sands, waiting to be uncovered. The secret beneath the sand. Ancient Egypt has fascinated humanity for thousands of years. Its pyramids still dominate the horizon. Its temples still stand against the passage of time. Its kings and queens continue to speak to us through monuments, inscriptions, and mummies preserved across the centuries. Yet the greatest secret of ancient Egypt was never hidden inside a tomb. It was never locked behind a stone door. It was never buried beneath tons of sand. The greatest secret was the human desire to overcome death itself. Throughout this journey, we have explored a civilization built upon that dream. We have walked through silent tombs filled with treasures meant for eternity. We have witnessed the remarkable process of mummification. We have uncovered stories of tomb robbers, conspiracies, assassinations, forgotten rulers, and hidden knowledge. We have seen how the Egyptians devoted enormous effort to preserving memory, because in ancient Egypt, memory was life. To be remembered was to endure. To be forgotten was to disappear. The pharaohs understood this. The priests understood this. The ordinary people who left offerings for their ancestors understood this. And perhaps that is why ancient Egypt still captures our imagination today. Their monuments survived. Their names survived. Their stories survived. In many ways, they achieved exactly what they hoped to achieve. Thousands of years after their deaths, we still speak their names. We still study their lives. We still wonder about their mysteries. The sands of Egypt continue to reveal new discoveries. Hidden tombs are uncovered. Lost artifacts emerge from the earth. Ancient texts reveal forgotten details of a world long gone. Each discovery answers one question and creates several more. Because ancient Egypt remains, in many ways, unfinished. There are chambers still unexplored, sites still buried, stories still waiting to be told. Some mysteries may one day be solved. Others may remain hidden forever, and perhaps that is part of Egypt's enduring power. A civilization devoted to eternity should never be completely understood. There should always be another doorway, another inscription, another secret waiting beneath the sand. As the sun sets beyond the Nile and darkness settles across the desert, the monuments remain, silent, ancient, watching. The pharaohs are gone. The priests are gone. The empire has long since faded into history. But their legacy endures. Not because they conquered every enemy, not because they built the tallest monuments, but because they left behind something even more powerful, a story of ambition, a story of faith, a story of power, a story of mortality, and above all, a story about humanity's timeless struggle against being forgotten. The sands continue to shift. The centuries continue to pass. Yet ancient Egypt remains, guarding its secrets, whispering its stories, and reminding us that while civilizations may fall, the desire to be remembered is truly eternal. Thank you for joining us on this journey through ancient Egypt's darkest secrets, and somewhere beneath the endless desert, another secret may still be waiting.